Hello everyone and welcome back to MMA Start to Finish. It's a new Millennium and a new look for the show. We have B-roll now, like a proper show.
Hey, we're doing it.
So we will have a little peek at what was going on during the event. Very important to note for angry commenters and UFC lawyers. There is no fight footage in the B-roll. You're just going to have Gary Goodrich flexing real hard, Mark Coleman high-fiving fans so hard it makes their hand hurt.
Yeah.
Lots of fun stuff like that.
We're not going to show the whole show.
Again, we're not trying to end up in internet jail.
Yeah.
But it should be fun to talk about the opening night of the Pride Grand Prix, one of the events that put Pride on the map. I think night 2 put it on the map more so than night 1, to be honest, because not to jump ahead of ourselves, but some of the fights were a little lackluster.
There are some snooze fests, yeah.
So if you don't know, if you've been living under a rock, the Pride Grand Prix is a giant 16-man tournament to be held over 2 separate nights. You have people like Big Daddy Gary Goodrich in the tournament, got Mark Kerr, Mark Coleman, Royce, Gracie, Sakaraba. It's star-studded.
Yeah, they got everybody.
So if you watched our last video, our top 10 fighters of the 90s, there's a lot of people from that list in this tournament. So that's exciting news for us.
And we have a huge audience, 48,000 people.
Yeah, it's an indoor facility, which if you're North American may lead you to believe that it's between 17 and 25,000 people, like a typical hockey or baseball arena. But no, they're in Japan. That shit's huge. You said 40, how many?
48,000.
48,000 people. So, holy shit. That's incredible. Also important to note that for the first half of the evening, we were blessed by Ken Shamrock on commentary.
That's right.
Actually, minor correction. I don't know if it was the whole first half of the evening. I know he definitely stopped commentating after the Guy Mesger fight.
Yes.
But I don't know if he stayed on after he gave his in-ring spiel. But we'll get to that later.
Mm-hmm. The way they do fight rounds is different again.
I think it's for the tournament. Yeah, please explain because I forgot to mention.
It's a 15-minute round, at the end of which the judges will decide if they're going to fight another round or if there's just a winner.
Yeah, they would deem if an overtime was necessary. This new and weird round structure would be the source of some contention later on.
Mm-hmm.
Kick, he can knee, but he can also grapple now, we know. So that's dangerous. Dangerous individual.
So for the first fight of the night, we actually had a non-tournament bout between Vanderlei Silva and Bob Schreiber. The only time I think we've seen Bob on here before was when he was being a cheating dickhead against, I can't remember who, but he axe kicked them after the ref had pulled him off.
Yeah.
And did other illegal shit.
Yeah.
I think it might have been Otsuka or something, or Inoue.
Otsuka sounds more correct.
Either way, dude kind of blows, and happy to see Vanderlei get the W.
Yeah.
In such an impressive fashion, too.
Bob didn't really have any kind of ups in this, other than looking larger in the beginning.
I mean, yeah, it's an open weight bout, as is every fight tonight, because the Grand Prix is an open weight tournament. Bob, yes, larger. Bob also not really up to snuff in any area. I mean, commentary thought he'd be a better striker because of his kickboxing background, but Vanderlei implemented those knees to perfection. So Silva, after piecing him up on the feet, would get a takedown where he would eventually advance into mount, and Bobby would give him his back, and it'd be strangle time. It was a pretty quick fight. Did not go the 15 minutes.
No.
Not even close. I think the fight had to have been less than 5 minutes.
It was 2 minutes and 42 seconds.
You have the official time, yes. So, dominance for Vanderlei. I learned later, because I know neither of us noticed this upon recording, apparently this is an alternate bout. So if somebody is, for whatever reason, unable to continue in the second night, Vanderlei is the replacement.
That's a heck of a replacement.
Oh, yeah. Can you imagine having this match? It's like, oh, I'm sorry. Mark Kerr couldn't make it. The Axe Murderer will take you now. I don't know which is worse, frankly. Actually, yes, I do.
There'd be so much... Like, imagine you're originally going to go against Gary Goodrich, then you get replaced... He gets replaced with Vanderlei Silva.
It's funny because, like...
This is an entirely different fighting style.
The threat of Vanderlei is similar to the threat offered by Gary in, like, the mid-90s of, like, just violence.
Yeah.
Look at that face. Look at that man. Also, on a side note, while we're looking at the B-roll here, I love that everybody who wins tonight gets a medal.
Yeah.
Even the alternate bout.
This is the peak time for participation trophies.
Oh, another thing I wanted to note that I forgot to mention was that on commentary, Stephen Quadros did mention that Bob took the fight on short notice. So, for what it's worth, I figured I'd mention that, even though I don't know what sort of training he would have had to undertake in, like, a couple weeks to be able to beat Vanderlei.
There's not much he really could have done.
Not at this stage of his career, I don't think.
So I have one announcement to make. And that announcement is that I have signed a deal with Pride to fight 2 fights. And they would be held here in Japan, where I first started my career.
Before the first tournament fight of the night, we were greeted by Ken Shamrock in the center of the ring. He left his posted commentary to tell the Pride fans some interesting news.
Ken was talking about how he regretted leaving, I forget what he called it, but MMA.
He called it, because he's so old that he doesn't even really call it MMA, even though by this time they had started calling it mixed martial arts, at least to some degree. He called it no holds barred, like competition, or no holds barred fighting or something like that. Which is, like, technically not correct, because there are barred holds, but I'm being pedantic, so go on.
And that he regrets it so much, he's coming back, and he was going to go into, it was 2 different fights.
Yeah, he signed a deal with Pride for 2 fights.
Yeah. And so, it was basically just him announcing, hey, Japan, I'm back.
What was really funny about this interview is he gave, like, basically 2 long speeches that had to be transcribed by the Japanese translator. So, like, any exciting thing he said, like, I'm gonna fight in Pride, got the most delayed pop of all time, because that was at the end of his big soliloquy, and then the translator had to translate the entire thing, so you needed basically double the length of time after he had said something before you got the reaction of the crowd from it. It was really funny, because he said, I'll be fighting in Pride, and you heard, like, the 10% of the audience that speaks English pop, and then crickets, and it was really awkward, and then, like, 3 minutes later, the rest of the audience
like,
got the message. Yeah. It was really good. That was the one thing I needed to mention, because it was very funny.
Man. You think that he's been in Japan for so long
That he speaks any Japanese?
that he'd be able to, like, get his point across?
I
say some in English and then say it in Japanese.
I don't think Ken ever, like, lived... I mean, I could be wrong. Please correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think he lived or really trained necessarily in Japan. I just think that's where he competed. So he would fly out to Japan for his pancrase fights and then just go home. He was there a lot for competition, but I don't think he necessarily lived or trained there, so I don't think he really would put in the effort to learn the language.
Exposure.
Yeah.
Japanese promotion, Japanese businessmen.
I don't know if he was really thinking like that back then.
Japan.
I think maybe if he had his pancrase career after he had his WWF run, where he has marketing brain going, because as part of being a professional wrestler, not to go on like a big sidetrack, is you have to have like a marketing brain. How am I going to make money off of my character? It's basically the whole idea of being a pro wrestler. So once you have that experience, maybe you take some of that mindset over into MMA. But I think because he had the reverse, he really wasn't in that frame of mind to think, oh, how am I going to increase my exposure in Japan? Let me learn Japanese. He wouldn't probably be thinking like that until after he had been in, like after he'd had his Japanese run, basically. At least that's my thought about why he may. And maybe I'm dumb and Ken just does know Japanese. Maybe that's also possible. Please tell me if I'm wrong. So, bit of spoilers for you, Matt, because I know you don't know. I believe I'm like 80% on this one. I should check, but I'm pretty sure the whole mess that occurs later in the night with Guy kind of put the kibosh on Ken's whole Pride run.
Oh no.
I'm pretty sure Ken never fought in Pride because of what happened.
Oh no.
Yeah, it was a whole thing.
Oh.
Which, if you don't know what we're talking about, first of all, why haven't you watched the Grand Prix? The show is really confusing if you haven't watched the fights yet. What are you doing? Get Fight Pass. It's like $10. But second of all, there's a fight later on where Ken corners Guy Mezger that ends in some controversy. We'll get into it later. Let's not jump the gun.
I told you. A straight forearm choke from the side mount. Gary Goodrich has made Mr. Tachichiri tap out.
In the first tournament fight of the evening, we had Big Daddy Gary Goodrich taking on the 6'5", nearly 300-pound sumo wrestler. I cannot ever manage to pronounce his name correctly. Can you help me, Matt?
His name is Taichi Hikari.
For some reason, I struggle with this. Anyway, Gary dominated this man from bell to bell. It ended in less than a minute, if I'm not mistaken.
51 seconds.
It was funny because before the fight started, as they were standing in their respective corners, Stephen Quadros said, "I expect violence." I don't know why he would expect violence with this big but unexperienced man.
Sumo wrestlers have not done very well, as far as we've seen. Though it's still weird how they put Gary's
Fighting
style.
I was just going to mention that.
As arm wrestling?
It's like very memey. He's clearly at this point just like an MMA fighter. Like with a varied skill set. But he's also a renowned arm wrestling champion, I suppose. So why not advertise that? Yeah, but Gary, like, this is dumb as shit. He won with a forearm choke, y'all. I guess the arm wrestling really, came into play.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's right. He did. It was like 500 arm wrestles in an hour.
He defeated 500 men consecutively arm wrestling inside of like some absurd period of time. Look at him flexing. I just wanna divert to this for a minute because it's just like insane. I think they said on commentary that's his brother, but after he won, they just flexed so hard.
They were flexing in the ring, outside the ring, on their way out of the stadium.
So yeah, I basically expected this to happen. As soon as I learned it was like an unexperienced sumo wrestler, I expected Gary to dominate.
Even for a smaller sumo wrestler, by comparison to what we've been seeing, 500 and 400 pounds. This guy's not even 300.
I thought he would do better because he was more reasonably sized. I figured he'd be more mobile and would perhaps have some actual combat skills, but
seems like after
wrong.
275, unless you're mostly muscle, it's not going to work out for you.
Yeah, or you're like Butterbean.
That's an oddity in itself.
True. Or Bob Sapp, but that's big steroid neck man.
Well, yeah, that's the muscle part. He's mostly muscle.
Yes.
He fits into that.
In our second tournament bout of the evening, we had Akira Shoji defeat Ebenezer Fontes Braga by decision, and this is also the point in the night where we would learn what the round structure was like because it wasn't relevant yet until now.
Yeah.
Pretty even fight. Honestly, if this wasn't a Japanese fighter versus a Brazilian fighter, I think it probably would have gone to that overtime period. I have some thoughts on this fight, but is there anything, given that Shoji, little ad for our last video, was among your top 5 fighters of the 1990s, I figured I'd give you the first word on this fight.
I think Akira did best when he was on the ground. At least in my opinion.
I would tend to agree with that. They did spend a lot of this fight in guard, and a lot of that was initiated by Akira. I thought Akira was kind of at a disadvantage because they're both pretty well versed. Neither of them are scrubs anywhere really, and Braga was the bigger dude, so I figured he'd have the advantage. But I feel like Shoji did a pretty good job mitigating the size disadvantage. With that said, I don't think he really won the fight convincingly by any form. I think it really was, going with the judging criteria they have, something that probably should have gone to overtime. But I think he did a good job bringing the fight where he wanted it to be, if that makes sense.
Yeah, because where Braga did best, I think, was his knees when they were in a clinch in the beginning.
Which was a very short portion of the fight. It was only the very beginning, and then it went to where Akira wanted it, which was just guard play for the remainder of the fight.
And so Akira was able to,
get the decision rendered, the W. Interesting that this is actually a shorter period than you would normally see for a Pride fight going to decision. Because normally, it's 2 10-minute rounds, so it's 20 minutes. This is one 15-minute round. I'd have to assume, because none of the fights actually went to the overtime, that the overtime would be like a 5-minute period.
I want to say I heard them on commentary talk about it would be another 15-minute round.
That would be grueling.
Yeah.
And potentially unfair considering you'd have... Well, actually, I'm going to retract that because it would be fine because you're not competing again tonight. The second round is in May, I believe. So we have quite some time before we discuss the second leg of the Grand Prix.
Yeah.
今日は皆さんどうもありがとうございました。
In our next tournament bout of the evening, we had Kazuki Fujita defeat Hans Niemann by what Wikipedia described as a scarf hold. And before we say anything else, I just want to note, it seems like Dutch kickboxers not named Bas Rutten cannot really handle these chokeholds. Because we got Hans Niemann now, Bob Schreiber earlier in the night, all getting choked out.
I don't know why they're having so much trouble with this. Is this like their first MMA fight, or?
It's not. It's definitely not for Schreiber because we've seen him fight before. I don't know. Like earlier on in the sport, like in the 90s, for our older, less high quality shows, you would understand if someone whose base was kickboxing didn't really spend a ton of time wrestling or doing jiu-jitsu, learning how to like at least avoid those situations. But we are in the year 2000. We've entered the new millennium. Y2K has already occurred. You have your shit in gear by this point. Especially for the Grand Prix, it's a big show.
In Japan, no less.
And I'm to be fair, I'm sure like he did train grappling. I don't want to be rude, but I was unimpressed by getting finished by a choke like this. Maybe we're spoiled because we watch modern MMA and no one's going to get finished by something like this in a show that's on television today.
Yeah.
But it just... I don't want to say it leaves a bad taste in my mouth because that's perhaps a little too harsh, but it's not flattering.
It's not. Maybe he'll come back at another point.
Oh, and as you can see on the B-roll here, I don't know what he was saying, but we did have Fujita give a speech to the audience that they ate up. They were loving it.
It seemed to be like a lot of pro wrestling kind of talking.
If I'm not mistaken, I believe he does have pro wrestling experience, like of the Sakaraba build.
Yeah.
Like if we're playing Dark Souls, if Pride's Dark Souls, like there's the Sakaraba build, which is like former pro wrestler. And then there's the Bas Rutten build, which is like kickboxer who's white.
What's the Nobuhiku build?
That's like that's the Sakaraba build, but you've put all your points into charisma.
He's now going to fight overtime with Mr. Sakaraba.
There's something going on. I see.
Ken Shamrock doesn't seem real happy with the decision of a draw. He seems pretty compelled to think that that was a decision for Guy Messier. I would tend to agree on a technical standpoint.
In the next fight of the night, we had Kazushi Sakaraba defeat, and I use air quotes around that word, Guy Messier by what Wikipedia described as TKO retirement. So that's pretty good. Not from the sport, from the fight, but it's still very funny. Before we get into the controversy that ensued after the fight, let's talk about the fight. So if you want to open up with your thoughts on the fight and how things went.
I think Sakuraba is just too small to take on Guy properly.
I think that's the story of the fight as well. I don't think Sakuraba could really implement his game plan against Guy Messier, who's somebody that's like well versed everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
I think at that skill difference, at that level of skill gap between the two, you start to see size matter a lot more, because they're pretty close in terms of technical skill, but Guy's just a larger man.
Mm-hmm.
So it sort of winds up becoming a stalemate. I mean, a lot of the fight was Guy fishing for, Sakuraba fishing for a single leg that he didn't really hit at any point.
He was really trying for it, and he tried to get an armbar at one point too.
You certainly couldn't fault him for inactivity. He really gave it his best, but it just never, came to fruition. He landed like a head kick earlier, but you could tell pretty early on he didn't really want to stand and bang with Guy, because Guy has experience with that, and that probably would not have ended very well for Sakuraba, honestly.
So even with the size difference, I feel like this first round was, it should go on to a second round.
In overtime?
Because it was so close.
So, are you ready for the story of why, as you can see on the B-roll here, we had a very angry Ken Shamrock pointing and saying 1 over and over again? He was told, that camp was told, and Pride is notorious for changing shit at the last fucking second.
Mm-hmm.
They were told it would only be 1 round. They weren't told of any overtime. They had agreed to a 1 round, at least according to them, according to Ken, because I've heard Ken speak on this. They had agreed to you see him going like 1 to Sakuraba and the referee like that.
Yeah.
He agreed to a 1 round fight. So out of principle, he's like, no, we're fucking leaving. We didn't agree to this. And also, if you had, part of it too is that if you had to judge based on that 1 round, Guy won. And to be fair to them, I didn't see the judges call for an overtime in any other fight tonight. Any of the other fights that went to decision. And there were other fights that went to decision that probably could have been sent to an overtime justifiably. Frankly, let's just go back a couple fights. Braga, Shoji, you think if that fight that was very even wasn't slightly tilted towards Braga more, that they wouldn't have sent that to an overtime? I don't want to shit on the promotion too much, but also, let's realize who we're talking about. It's Pride, the Yakuza-run pro wrestling adjacent MMA organization. So, they are known to have done shady shit. So my point is, I very much understand Ken's rage. So now that you're armed with that information, I'm curious to hear your thoughts.
I think, even with that, they should have tried for the second round. Because, at least from your perspective, you think Guy was winning.
You think he would have won anyway?
I think, given another round, Guy would have definitely won. If not by outright submission or TKO or KO, just in a decision after that.
I suppose, but if the overtime is a 15-minute period, that's a lot more energy. That's a lot more chance of that dude getting hurt. That's a lot more chance of him running out his gas tank as the bigger dude and then succumbing to like an arm lock from Sakaraba. Like, if that's not what you agreed to, I understand them being like, no, fuck you.
I still think, personally, I think that they were more tied in that first round, but if given another round, Messier would have won.
I'm less objecting to whether or not it was even or not, and more objecting to the fact that they were told one thing and then all of a sudden it's something else.
Oh yeah, that's not fair at all. But
see Ken there? See Ken? He's very upset.
Yeah.
He's gonna keep yelling at him. I thought he was gonna like put him in the fucking ankle lock from his WWF days. He's getting real mad at that ref, dude.
But I think if you're put in that position, I think if I was Ken, I think I would have had Messier go for that other round.
The one thing I will acquiesce is that I kind of wish he would have let Guy decide, because it sort of seemed like he was his dad. He was like, no, you're fucking going back. Like, he didn't seem like he gave him a choice. Tell us in the comments what you think. We clearly don't fully agree on this, so I'm curious to see what the audience thinks of the whole Grand Prix fiasco.
There he is at ringside. A huge victory for Mark the Hammer Coleman.
Yes.
In the next fight of the evening, we had Mark Coleman defeat Masaki Sataki. Am I saying that right? I always feel like I'm saying that name wrong.
That's the correct way to say it.
Actually, I feel confident in the last name. It's the first name. And I think the reason I feel so not confident is because I have it written very illegibly in my notes. And yes, it is on the screen, but it's kind of hard to read with the weird like shimmer effect. Couple things to note, which I'll let you expand on for us, Matt. Entrances for the first time this evening, at least for the Fight Pass cut of the event.
Yeah, and Masaki walked out with Godzilla roars. And
I believe it was the Godzilla theme. Yeah.
So he's showing off his professional wrestling background.
You know, it would have been way cooler if he didn't just get like stomped in less than like 10 minutes.
Yeah.
But he did kind of just get taken down by Coleman early, and then, you know, caught in a submission that if you were caught in after 2005, you'd be ashamed of.
Yeah. Coleman, he's not going to age well with this sport, I don't think.
Yeah, he's limited. In this case, it's effective still because of the competition.
And just some raw strength.
Yeah. And this dude, I believe, was actually a kickboxer. I think he was the one, and we'll see as he walks out here later in our B-roll footage, who came out with Maurice Smith and Tsuyoshi Kosaka.
Oh, I think I might have been thinking of a different person then.
So, yeah, he had the kickboxing background.
Okay.
But
it was a very pro wrestling-esque.
Yeah, as you can see in the B-roll, we're about to launch into his entrance, which contains the Godzilla theme, so we're not going to give you any sound for copyright reasons. But I can totally understand why you might have thought he was a pro wrestler instead of a kickboxer.
It was such a grandiose entrance.
That's pride for you, baby. But yeah, he had Maurice Smith and Tsuyoshi Kosaka in his corner. It was his first mixed martial arts fight, which is bad.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
But given his training partners, you'd think he'd be a little more. Let's jump to it. You'd think he wouldn't have been caught in a neck crank. That's kind of what I'm getting at. Like, it's the neck crank to me that's the primary issue. The only other thing really of note, which you'll see in probably a minute or so here, is that Mark Coleman was very clearly excited to have won this fight. Things hadn't been going so great for him as of late. The interesting fight against Takada wasn't that long ago. So I'm sure it felt nice for him to participate in a legitimate fight in Japan and come out on top. Hence his very aggressive high fives that are about to happen.
Yeah, he was living in the moment.
Look at him.
He's-
Look at him go.
yeah,
Yeah. Give it to him, Mark. Yeah. I think there's the one dude. He's gonna high five so hard that the dude's like, "Yo, my hand is fucked."
Yeah.
He's just hugging everybody. Look at this, pandemic-free world. Celebrating, yelling.
He's got to feel great, though.
I'm going to be real, and this is rude probably. This celebration where he's like, hugging adoring babies, way more... Look at that dude. That's the dude whose hand was hurt.
Yeah.
Way more entertaining than the fight.
Yeah. Because it's just Mark being hype.
Я благодарю всех зрителей за большую поддержку, за уважение к этому шоу. Благодарю также своего соперника. Честно говоря, не хотел никогда с ним встречаться, как-то ему симпатизирую.
In the third to last fight of the evening, we had Igor Volchanchin taking on Alexander Otsuka. Igor, clearly much larger man.
For sure.
It seemed like Otsuka had a decent game plan, which was sort of like takedown focused, since Igor's, a striker. But Igor's too big. He couldn't get him to the ground, and he wound up just eating a bunch of shots from sprawl.
Yeah, Otsuka has the skill set. It's just not the strength.
There's a couple fights tonight that are like just cases for weight class. Like the Guy Mezger Sakaraba fight, another fight that's a case for weight classes.
Mm-hmm.
Because those two are so close in skill level that the weight class is really the big difference. And Otsuka, I know we talk about, Sakaraba a lot for being a guy who transitioned well from pro wrestling to MMA. But even though he lost this fight, Otsuka has done a pretty good job with the transition as well.
Yeah.
At least from what we've seen so far. And Igor's no slouch, so to not get finished, this fight did go to decision, is impressive.
Yeah, Otsuka had a few close. I think he had a triangle at one point, but lost it.
He had a triangle attempt because Igor got a little overzealous.
Yeah.
Igor landed kind of big on the feet and then sort of went in for the kill, and then lost his balance and positioning, and Alex almost secured a submission, but again, size, and he never, and I shouldn't say almost, that wasn't ever really close enough where he had like the leg over the foot or anything like that. But you could see the beginnings of a triangle, and if Igor had no idea what was going on, he could have been caught in that, but clearly smarter than that.
And to kind of close it all together, Igor got mount. So.
Yeah, he closed out the fight in mount by sort of landing. Nothing that was going to threaten to end the fight, really. Certainly securing a decision and avoiding the mythical overtime.
Yes.
And I'd like to thank Ensign. He has a heart of a warrior. He's a true gentleman.
All right, up next we had Mark Kerr lay on top of Ensign Inoue for 15 minutes and win.
Yeah.
Kind of sucked. I like both these gentlemen a good bit, so I was excited for this fight, but it was kind of trash. Stand-ups are important. Some fights on this card tonight are a case for weight classes. Some are a case for stand-ups.
Absolutely.
This is a case for stand-ups.
Kerr immediately took down Inoue, and that's where all the action stopped.
Once again, much actually more than the Mark Coleman fight. In the Mark Kerr fight, again, blessed with entrances, the entrances, much more entertaining than the fight itself. Definitely in this fight.
Yeah.
Little side note. I don't think you noticed, because we didn't notice it when we watched it the first time. I only noticed it getting these clips. But apparently, Steven Quadros of commentary mentioned that on the way to the ring, or while Ensign was on his way to the ring, that apparently before the fight, Ensign had said he was going to butcher Mark Kerr's face or something like that. Like some incredible violent shit talk. And then it was just this sleep fest where Mark was very nice. And we can get to it. We don't even need to sorry, Ensign, when you get, laid upon for 15 minutes, the people don't get to watch your entrance. After laying on the dude, Mark gets on the microphone, starts being the sweet man we've come to know. Every time we've heard him on microphone, he sounds like a cuddly teddy bear, as Inoue walks away in shame. And I can't quite recall what exactly he said, but I remember him praising Inoue as he walked away, disappointed. Which is way funnier when you know that he made, pro wrestling level threats before the fight.
Kerr kills them with kindness.
Indeed. It's like a retail worker.
Yeah. We both agree that, Kerr was the winner.
Oh, yeah. There's, in my mind, no case
ignoring
to be made.
the judge's decision, Kerr won just because he was on top.
I mean, the thing is, we can complain all we want about no stand-ups, but given that the fact that those are given the fact that those are the rules, I can't fault, the judges for being well, he was on top of him the whole time. Because, what do you want to do? Send him to another 15-minute overtime where he's going to lay on top of him for another 15 minutes?
I don't know if you noticed it, but I did, and I made a note of it. It was a majority decision. That's
right. One of the judges had a draw and wanted them to continue into the overtime period, which I think is defensible, but would not have been my decision.
Yeah.
I don't think that's egregious or anything like that. But
I think it's weird.
Sure. It's it's Sisyphusian. You know what I mean?
Because nothing was happening.
For anybody who doesn't know, boy who pushed rock uphill man. That's who we're talking about.
Well, I've seen a lot of love taps.
Royce has won a unanimous decision.
We have arrived at the last fight of the evening, the main event essentially. Royce Gracie versus Nobuhiko Takada. Wow, this fucking sucked. Takada sort of just...
It was actually worse than the other fight that we just watched.
It was worse than the Kerr fight, yeah. Because Kerr was at least threatening, because it's this large meat man on top of you, threatening to smash you at any moment. Where this is kind of just camping in Royce's guard, basically.
Yeah, Nobuhiko got on top and just held that position the entire time. He threw literally one punch just before the end of the round.
I mean, you
the
have
15-minute round.
You have to wonder, just because there's known situations of Takada being involved in illegitimate fights before, if this maybe was another case. But I guess you'd wind up having then to question well, I don't know if you would have to question the credibility of Royce, because Royce wouldn't have to be in on it if Takada was still in the fight. Yeah. So I don't know. It was just weird. This is the last fight if the dude on the bottom won, and then Royce got on the microphone and said how this is his ring now or some weird shit.
Yeah.
And it just was bad. I was just very nonplussed by all of it.
It was very lackluster end.
Yeah. So, do you want to spend any more time on this fight? Because frankly, I don't think it deserves us to spend much more time on it.
Nobuhiko does not have my respect.
No, not at all. He did not even sniff my top 15 fighter list of the 90s.
Royce Gracie, he was there.
He existed and won. He did things, sort of, kind of. Without further ado, let's just kind of launch into our closing thoughts for the event. Up and down show. The idea behind it is exciting. I am excited to watch the second leg. There were moments in fights tonight that I really enjoyed, but frankly, I don't know if there were any fights that I was wow, I really liked watching that fight. There were some that were interesting chess matches, Guy and Sakaraba, I thought that was interesting, but I didn't necessarily find it super entertaining.
Sakaraba's fight was probably my favorite.
If you force me, yeah, I'd probably pick that.
Just because they're both very active and they're on the same skill level, but it's just one guy's a little bit bigger. Second would be Akira Shoji's fight with Ebenezer Braga. Because there was the same idea, just they're both the same skill level, but one's a little bit bigger than the other.
Yeah. There was a few fights tonight where it was just a case of bigger man won. So now that we have most of the dudes out of the tournament where their size may have been their like limitation, I suppose that it'll be interesting to see in the second round who is successful. Because, you know, we have both Marks, we have Igor, we have Guy. We actually don't have Guy, that's right.
No, we have Sakaraba. The small guy.
We have one of them. One of them made it through. Sakaraba made it through. There was no big guy in the Gracie Takada fight, but Gracie doesn't need to be big. That's kind of his thing.
Yeah.
Gracie doesn't really fit into this equation. But everybody else made it through. I mean, I can just look over. Big Daddy, the biggest dad, has made it through. As you're about to see here, now that Royce has done his speech, all the winners from the tournament tonight are about to pour into the ring, and you will see them line up like the conclusion of a Dragon Ball Z episode or something. It's actually pretty great. So you got Mark Kerr coming on in now, followed by other Mark, Coleman.
So surely they're going to try to make it so that these are fights that wouldn't be like part 2.
I don't know how they're going to seed them.
Or like they wouldn't have Mark Kerr versus Mark Coleman.
Do you think they would, though? How would that go? That'd be interesting.
I think they might want to do it, but then the Marks are going to be like, nah, we have a truce.
I mean, if neither of them ever lose, they're going to have to do it in the finals.
Yeah.
So,
but I think they would want to keep it to that end.
So, like, if you... This will be a little fun thing to do here at the end while we talk about the next show. Because I'm pretty sure we're going to have at least, like, a couple UFC shows in between this and our next... and then, you know, the second half of the tournament. We might even have, like, another just off Pride show in there. Because I think it's a couple months. I don't think it's, like, the next Pride show is the second leg. I could be mistaken. I'll have to look into that. But regardless, if you were booking the second leg, you have these 8 fighters, what are the 4 fights you would make? I know off the top of my head, I actually know what one of them is, so I'm not going to be able to do this. But I want to hear you as somebody going in completely blind. What would the 4 fights you would book be with these 8 people?
I would have Mark Kerr versus Mark Coleman, just because I want to see them go against each other. You want to guarantee that happens? Because there's no way that they're actually going to do it.
I mean, if you need reminding of who's in there, just look at the B-roll footage.
I know. I'm just trying to think of what would be a good matchup. Sakaraba and Royce, I think would be pretty good.
Okay.
We gotta have like one little guy versus a big guy, so we'll do Akira Shoji versus Big Daddy.
I would like that. I think that would be good.
Yeah.
And then that leaves you with Fujita and Igor.
Yeah.
Which I think would be a cool fight too.
Yeah. That's just a plain action fight.
Well, I guess we'll have to see next time. I will tell you this. I'm not going to tell you which one. One of the ones you said is the booking.
Okay.
One of them is the booking. I'm not going to say which one it is. One of them is the booking.
I would lose my mind if you were going to tell me that I like predicted the exact card.
That would be incredible. And I actually wouldn't know because I only remember what the first fight is.
Oh, okay.
And with that, any closing thoughts before we bid them farewell? Oh, closing thought from me. Tell us what you think of the new format. I think it looks way more cool to have a little TV here for you guys to watch the men who've just fought dance around in victory.
Yeah.
Or walk to the cage menacingly.
Also just gives you guys something to look at if you just want to have this up on the screen.
Yeah, if you want a more visual than auditorial experience. So slight correction, I'm actually looking at the Pride calendar right now. I was right about the finals not taking place until May, but that is their next event. There is no Pride events between January 2000 and May 2000.
What about UFC?
Our next show and the first UFC card of the 21st century, the new millennium, is UFC 24, First Defense, from Lake Charles, Louisiana. So we go from, 48,000 people, was it? To
Maybe
probably
480.
an undisclosed number.
Yeah.
So that'll be exciting. That'll be next time on the show. Until then, we hope you enjoyed. If you did, please hit the like button, leave a comment, all the YouTube things, and we'll see you next time.
Bye. We love you.